Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Brewing the American Dream webinar presented in partnership with Accion and Samuel Adams. My name is Meredith Medlin, and I'm really glad to have you all with us today. Especially during such a chaotic time for small business, we are really proud to support entrepreneurs through access to capital and through educational opportunities like this webinar. And we are really grateful to our national food and beverage partner, Sam Adams, for their consistent commitment to small businesses. This coronavirus pandemic has drastically changed our way of life very quickly. And while everyone's first concern is, of course, their health and the health of their families, the Brewing the American Dream team is also really focused on supporting entrepreneurs as you weather this storm and recover. Over the next several weeks, we'll be hosting a series of webinars like this one to provide you with valuable information on creating ways to keep your doors open, resources that are available to support your business, and much more. We are here to help you. Today's webinar will address questions specifically relating to maintaining a connection with your customers, even while your business operations might have recently changed. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers lined up for you today, but before we begin, I want to quickly go over a few logistical and tech pieces so we're all experiencing this webinar well together with our Zoom tool. If you are joining us by computer today, you should be able to see the presentation slides through the Zoom Webinar Tools window on your desktop. You'll see in that Zoom tool that there is a chat function in the black toolbar. Inside the window, that black toolbar's chat function is where you should go to type out any questions you have throughout today's presentation. Feel free to type in questions whenever they come to you, and I'll administer a Q&A session following our discussion based on the questions that are typed into that chat box. We will be recording today's webinar, so you can refer back to this information at a later time, and I'll send an email containing a link to that recording shortly after this webinar concludes today. That email containing the recording link will also contain a short 2-minute survey that gives you a chance to tell us what you think of today's webinar, so please do take a couple minutes to give us some feedback. And now I am pleased to introduce our panel for today's discussion. Matt Whittington is the Director of Marketing at Samuel Adams, and he'll be sharing some pieces around brand consistency during this time of change. Connor Davey is Sam Adams' Digital Marketing Manager, and he'll provide some best practices on engaging with customers over social media in this time when you can't engage with them in person in the same way. And Joe McGrail is a manager of e-commerce assortment and marketplace activation, and he will help you understand the best way to set up and use online stores for your business. Alrighty, let's get started. I will hand things over to Matt.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. This is Matt. I hope first and foremost that you're all as well as can be, and that you and your families and friends are staying safe. So before we get into sort of the core of the presentation, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are really operating in an unprecedented time. Even for the Samuel Adams brand, we're just doing our best to try to navigate the uncertainty that we're facing and really put our consumers at the forefront of what we're doing and trying to flex and adapt. So, the aim of this presentation for us is really just to spend the next 10 minutes just talking high level about sort of navigating your brand through these uncertain times. And, it's hard to call anybody an expert. We certainly, are doing our best and have some great partners who help and advise us. But again, it's sort of a fluid situation. Things change day by day, but hopefully through the next 10 minutes or so, you'll get some tips that you can apply to your brand and business. So I think at the highest level, it's really important just to understand the current climate and just the emotional state of a consumer today. When you think about the numbers that we all hear on a daily and nightly basis, I mean, 37 million jobs at risk, 30 plus million children out of school, coronavirus. I mean, when we look even at Google search trends, I mean, it is certainly top of mind for people both day and night. So, it's likely the first thing that many people are thinking about when they wake up. It's likely the last thing that they're thinking about when they go to bed. So it's just important for us, as business owners, as brand leaders, to keep that in mind and just to consider, obviously, everything that's going on in people's lives. So what we believe that means for us really is that it has big implications for the way that we act as brands. So if people are afraid, certainly now is not the time to pretend that they're not. We've made some decisions on our end to delay different advertising campaigns. We've really shifted our focus to supporting various industries like the restaurant industry that's been hit particularly hard by this. So it's really about pivoting off of whatever plans you may have had and just being aware that people are afraid, and we've got to adjust our communications accordingly. And I think importantly, on the flip side of that is, there is fear, there's a bit of panic, and it's also not an opportunity for us to capitalize on that in any way whatsoever. And I think a lot of marketers, unfortunately, and business owners will get that wrong, despite maybe having the best intentions. It's very easy to sort of misstep when we're walking such a fine line here. So I think your consumers, your customers, they'll remember how you handled yourself during this time. So it's really critical that we get this right. So I think this is a quote that I think is especially fitting for the moment that we're in. Strategy and certainly brand strategy means knowing when to stay silent just as much as it means knowing what to post when. So just again to reiterate, we all need to avoid any sort of marketing ploys to get new consumers into our brands. I think the importance of treading lightly in terms of the content, the message, the tone of that message, certainly all needs to be considered and scrutinized daily. So it's just, the most important thing sometimes you can do for your business is to choose to not say anything at all. And that's always an option. And we'll give you some tips certainly into, ways that you can communicate effectively, because we need to walk that fine line between not, sort of going radio silent. We need to certainly be there and be present for our consumers. But at the same time, sometimes it's okay. The best decision is actually not saying anything at all. So when we're thinking about how do we communicate effectively, I think there's really three key approaches that I'd like to talk through. First is really just knowing your brand and your voice. I think consumers today are very sharp. I mean, when you think about the amount of communications that they interact with from brands or otherwise, I mean, they're bombarded with messaging, and they're very savvy at understanding when a brand or a business is sort of looking out into the world and tailoring their message appropriately. I think, pretty quickly, those who have misstepped there and haven't sort of taken a look around and seen the situation that's happening and sort of continued on with their marketing plans as they had them prior to, the explosion of the coronavirus, I think are often sort of held up as not being very self-aware. So, when communicating, be sure to speak to your audience in your brand voice in a very honest, open, transparent, and authentic way. I think we need that now more than ever. The second piece is really just being flexible. I've mentioned this a couple times, but it's a very fluid situation. So, messaging that might feel okay one day, perhaps the next day it might not be all right. Based on how things develop. So I think just having comfort in being flexible and knowing that your brand communications are going to need to change, they will change, and that it's really hard to predict what 2 weeks from now will look like or a month from now will look like. So it's really being able to sort of flex and adapt in your communication approach. And then the third piece is really looking ahead. So what you do in times like this certainly can have a really positive effect and change behaviors in the future. So this is an opportunity for you and your brand and your business to really build trust, to let consumers know that you're there for them. You have their best interest in heart. And this is, we're in this unprecedented time. So really it's not about us, it's about them. But that will just, build that long-term trust with your brand. So as much as it's about sort of dealing with the challenges in the moment, just remember that how we handle ourselves as brands and businesses during this moment can have a really long-lasting positive effect. Obviously, the more we can just sort of help and contribute in this time of need, the better. So I know that there are a lot of challenges that we're facing here, but at the same time, you can emerge from this with a stronger brand. So in this time of uncertainty, in this time where we don't necessarily know what tomorrow brings, building a strong brand is really a long-term commitment. And that is built off of every interaction that you have with your consumers, whether that is in a really challenging climate or in a really great climate. So we're always building our brands, and there's a few key things that you can do during this time that are activities that are easily done. You can do these at home. It gives you the opportunity to just sort of pause, reflect on your brand, reflect on your brand communications, and take the opportunity here to really sort of sharpen those up. So there's three activities that you can do, three exercises that you can try. One is called This, Not That. The other is called the Personality Challenge. And the third is called What's Your Story? So I'd love to just talk very quickly about each of these three, how these work and how your brand can benefit. So when we're thinking about This, Not That, it's exactly as it sounds, but it's really making sure that sometimes the best way to know what your brand is about is actually to list what it's not. So instead of just making those lists of words that you want to define your brand, add in a list of words that pair to help define what your brand or your company isn't. So as an example, your company can be smart but not complicated, simple but not boring, transparent but not chatty. So just thinking through sort of what you are and what you're not, it'll make it much clearer. So then when you're thinking about anytime you post or you put out a flyer or you put out any sort of communication, anywhere where you interact with consumers, this will just sharpen the way that you write, the personality and the tonality of your brand and how it comes through. So This, Not That, sometimes the not that is actually as effective or more at defining your this. So that's just one exercise that I highly recommend. You can write it out. You can use sticky notes, however you see fit. But sort of lining up what you are and what you aren't is a really easy way to sharpen the tonality of your brand. And then the next exercise we call this on the Personality Challenge. And if you think about your brand, you communicate with consumers every day. I think anytime, especially smaller businesses, like you guys are the epitome of marketing. You're interacting with consumers every day. You have strong social following. So when you think about your brand, try to think about it as a person. Think of as many of those personality traits as possible. If your brand were a celebrity, who would it be? If you were describing your brand to a friend and they were going to be coming to a party, how would you describe them? And then, another sort of layer to that is thinking about your brand. Is it a friend to the consumer? Is it a partner? Is it an advisor? Or something else entirely? So, we can take, some brands will take sort of a route of sort of the all-knowing, wise brand that's much more of sort of a parental figure. Others can be, your friend and drinking buddy, etc. So thinking about your brand this way will also help you sharpen your voice and tonality as a brand. And then the third one is really about storytelling. I mean, at the end of the day, each and every one of us are storytellers. So when you really think about how to engage with consumers, defining your story is really important. I mean, consumers want to engage with brands that have a story. It's so much beyond a product now. They want to know the history of your company. They want to know your story. They want to know why your brand or your company came to be. And one great question, to ask yourself is, what is the problem that your brand is trying to solve? What is your reason for being? And think about that story. Whatever it may be. If it's about, I'll use an example. If you own a gym, you could be fighting sort of laziness and inspiring people. So then you think about, like, what is the enemy? What's the problem that you and your business are here to combat? And this will just really help you in your storytelling when you're thinking about what types of stories you want to tell, whether it be on social or elsewhere. Again, it'll just help sharpen sort of what are the stories you want to tell and what's the voice and the tone to which you're going to tell them. So those are just three really great exercises I recommend that you can easily do. Take a moment to do that. Your brand will be better for it in the long term. So Just in summary, I mean, first and foremost, obviously the current situation being so unprecedented, we just want to always ensure that we are understanding the current mindset, that we're being mindful of what's going on, people's fears, the realities of everything that people are facing in the moment. The second piece is really just around common sense, right? Being able to just sort of have a gut check and a feel of what you think is appropriate. You guys know your consumer bases best, but just always sort of apply that extra layer of common sense. And then third, just we all have the opportunity to emerge stronger. Certainly putting our consumers and their health and their well-being at the forefront now. Also sort of really being clear about who we are, what we represent, why we're here, what our purpose is, and then carrying that through in the different ways that we communicate going forward can help us emerge from this challenging time with even stronger brands. So I wish you all very well. I hope some of this was helpful. I'm excited to help answer any questions. And with that, I will turn things over to Connor Davey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Connor, and I work on social media at Boston Beer, on Sam Adams and Twisted Tea. And social media is pretty interesting right now. There's a lot going on. And so we've tried to ground ourselves in understanding the role that our brands can play online right now. And here's some of the thinking that we've put together, and I hope this is helpful for all of you as we navigate this. So, I mean, the first thing is, there's a lot going on right now, and while you can make the decision to ignore everything and just continue on the path that you had set, that's definitely not recommended. And I think a lot of brands who have tried that or did try that initially receive some pushback. And so you'll notice things like ads that were started prior to this are getting comments on them. This doesn't feel appropriate, things like that. So first thing is to just acknowledge the situation, evaluate anything that you had planned to post or were already posting or running ad-wise, and just check that with the current climate and make sure it still feels right. And the second thing is to lead with humanity. And I think this is, for us with larger national brands, it's something that sometimes we deviate from, but we're talking to people. Your customers are people, and they care about your business, and they care about the people who are behind the business. And so it's okay to open up and share the humanity behind your business, especially in times like this. And I think your customers will appreciate that, and it's actually a great opportunity to have conversations with people. We are kind of all going through some version of this, and being able to have those connections is important. So definitely lead your content with a human aspect, and lift the curtain a little bit if you haven't before. And the last pillar here that is something that we always champion, but is especially important in times like this, is to just provide value with your content. And value can come in many different ways, but right now information is very key. And if it's appropriate for your brand, some entertainment or levity can also play a role. But just trying to keep things positive. I think, if your business model has changed, if anything's changed related to your business, you need to communicate that out. And so social is a great place to do that. You can literally screenshot a note and send that out on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram to update people. So very, very low lift. And it's really helpful for your customers to know how they can support you and how you can support them in this time. The next slide here is about what to say, which is tough. And I think it takes a lot of not only looking into the role that your brand can play, but also what's going on in your customers' lives. And so it may look different for a national brand versus a more regional or local brand. And so the first thing you should do is just look at your customers. How are they behaving online? Are they asking you any questions? If you have a website, are you seeing any traffic spikes to certain pages? And really use that information to help you craft what you can say. If one person's asking you a question, there are likely other people out there who have the same thought, or if they haven't thought it yet, would at least be interested in learning. So start with your customers if you can. Create your content. So I don't think anyone was anticipating to be in this situation right now. So most of what you had planned, if you do have content ahead of time, likely needs to be revisited. The good part of this is that people are being a lot more flexible with the types of content that they're willing to take in right now, and not seeing too many people being critical of content aside from content that feels out of place in the current environment. So you don't need the perfect photography. It's really much more about the actual content itself. Are you saying something meaningful? Are you providing advice? Are you giving people information that they need? Really making sure that whatever you're saying is providing value. And then this last point is just to trust your instincts. I think, Matt started this by saying we're in a time like no other. It's completely unprecedented, and things are changing. So if you're the only one working on your social content, I recommend that you enlist a friend or someone that you trust who you can get a second set of eyes on it. I think one thing in social is, even if the intent is positive, things can still be misconstrued. So just having someone there to provide a second set of eyes. But at the end of the day, you have to trust your instincts. And if something doesn't feel right, hold off on it for now. Yeah, it's just the right thing to do. And for day-to-day planning, so obviously there's a lot going on every day, every hour even. So it is important, if you are communicating on behalf of your business, to stay informed. Every morning I log on to Twitter and just quickly look at what's trending. I check the news. I just make sure that I'm aware of all the headlines, because what's going on in the world should be influencing what you're saying as a brand right now. And so I know it can be a little overwhelming at times, but try to find a way that you can quickly ground yourself in what's happening in the world before you say anything as a business. And because everything's changing so fastly, you always have to reevaluate what you are planning. We've been checking things every day, even sometimes every hour, to make sure that what we are planning is still appropriate for the time. So just continue to reevaluate. If you ever need to enlist more friends, do that, but rely on your judgment. And then lastly, take a break. It really can be overwhelming at times, and sometimes it's just better to take a break and reset before you continue to post things on behalf of your company. So that's it for social media strategy. I wish you all well. And if you have any questions, we'll answer that at the end. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Connor. This is Joe McGrail. I am part of a small national e-commerce sales team at Boston Beer. I'm actually in the process of updating my resume because, like many of you, I've also become an assistant first grade teacher, preschool teacher, lead diaper changer. So wearing many hats over the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to talk to you a bit about e-commerce and start by talking about the current e-commerce landscape, because certain segments of e-commerce are just seeing tremendous growth over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of those segments are inside of food and beverage. So kind of an interesting time to be selling your products online. There's no doubt that food and beverage have historically been extremely underdeveloped relative to e-commerce, and that trend is rapidly changing overnight. I think the experts have looked at food and beverage and grocery and talked about how underdeveloped things like the alcohol industry were online. And expected to see a change in that by maybe 2023 or 2025, and it's literally like happening over the last couple of weeks. So So, you know, there's no doubt people don't want to leave their houses. In some cases, they can't leave their houses, and they're looking to the internet to solve some of their needs for food and beverage. So, you know, I think it's very likely that these shifts in shopping behavior will have staying power, because as more and more shoppers learn how easy it is to get your groceries ordered online and then picked up at a store, or even delivered to your house, and they start to get comfortable with that convenience, there's likely almost certainty that some of those shoppers will stick to that buying behavior when things at some point get back to normal. And I thought that there was a couple interesting data points I put on the bottom here, just to demonstrate that. You can see the spike in downloads for apps like Walmart Grocery, or Instacart, Shipped, or Target's mobile app, just over the last few weeks. So you can see that you know, people are downloading these apps, really looking to get things like food and beverage brought to their door so that they don't have to go to the grocery store. Just to reiterate that, Instacart just announced yesterday they're now going to be hiring 300,000 new personal shoppers over the next couple of months, just to meet the demand that they've faced over the last 2 weeks. 300,000 new roles they're adding to meet the demand for their on-demand product. So pretty interesting time for some players in e-commerce. So if could just jump to the next slide. You know, I know that there's different levels of kind of readiness as it relates to e-commerce, and some of you on the line may already be selling your products online, and some of you aren't. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit to both audiences. And this first slide will probably talk a bit more to the audiences that have not gotten involved with e-commerce. And these are some things to think about before you you know, really try to launch your brands online. You know, where do I want to sell my product? Do I want to sell them strictly on my website, or would I like to sell them in other online marketplaces like Amazon or eBay? What about through other retailers? And there's obviously national retailers like Walmart and Target that are selling products online, but also a lot of great locals. I mentioned Instacart. Instacart partners with local health food stores and local independent grocers. So it doesn't have to be a national player to get a product sold through an on-demand app like Instacart. So if I do decide where I want to sell my product, how am I going to fulfill those orders? You know, do I have the ability to pre-make orders and warehouse them? You know, where and how am I going to package and process my orders to get them out to shoppers? So things to think about. And then what do I want that marketplace experience to look like? And I'm going to show you a little bit about how Boston Beer tries to control that on the next few slides. But you know, Matt and Connor talked a lot about branding and you know, having a very clear message. When we start to sell products online, as a brand, depending on where we're selling our product, we may increase our ability to really represent our brand message, or in some cases we might lose a bit of it. So there's certain things that we can do inside of an e-commerce marketplace to really help make sure that our brand looks and feels the way that it should. And I'll show you a couple of those things on an upcoming slide. And then the last piece is, once I start selling product or hoping to sell product online, how am I going to generate traffic and demand? And I think, you know, some of the stuff that Connor just talked about was great. You know, a post on social media that, hey, you can buy our products online now, and you know, maybe a link to that site. Or mass emails. You know, I've been at Boston Beer for about 15 years, and over the years I've signed up for many newsletters from our customers. So my email gets pounded with you know, independent retailers sending emails, and over the last 2 weeks I've seen a ton of retailers say, hey, you can now order our products through our website, or you know, we will now deliver products to you, or you can pick them up curbside, things like that. So you know, letting people know through email, through social media, or different other events that your products are available to purchase online. So it's some really important considerations to think about. It's there is solutions like Shopify, which can kind of turn you into an online retailer in a couple of days. It's a great software tool that walks you through building an e-commerce marketplace. But I think that there's a lot of steps that you need to take before you do that. Much in the way that many of you have thought about, building out, how you were going to go to market. You need to take almost that same set of questions and think about how you're gonna show up online. And I'll show you a little bit about how Boston Beer does that on these next couple of slides. So these are a couple of essentials that we think about, and if you are already selling products through e-commerce, or if you're going to begin to think about it, you really want to focus on a couple of simple things like availability and visibility. Are our products available and visible the way that we want them to be across retail sites and across third-party sites? And that's a big pain point. The more that our brands get out there, so in the picture here you can see Truly showing up at Wegmans through Instacart. That there's so many retailers that are selling Truly online that it's hard for us to make sure that Truly is correctly represented across all of those websites. But what I do is I go and I audit that, and we look at certain retailers, and I search their websites and I search the third-party apps to make sure that our digital assets are showing up correctly and our titles are correct and things like that. And then relative to visibility, searchability is so important. You need to make sure that products are listed with the correct names, leading shoppers to a product page that has great imagery, and things like enhanced content, which let shoppers know a little bit more about your product and hopefully help them to connect to it a little bit more. On the next slide here, this is a little bit more detail about what Boston Beer focuses on inside of these product detail pages. I talked a little bit about product titles, but we put a lot of thought into how we name our products for online sales. Things like Samuel Adams. Somebody might search Sam, another person might search Samuel. There's probably people that search Sammy Adams. And we want to make sure that no matter what they're putting in, our products are going to show up. Product descriptions, making sure that people will be able to understand what this beer is. Those things are all really important. And then I talked a little bit about imagery. On the next slide, I'll show you some examples of how we use imagery to help drinkers and shoppers relate to our product. But there is, it is an important piece of e-commerce because most people are going to buy one of the first few products that pop up in a search, and you want to make sure that when that product pops up, it looks right and is eye-catching for the shopper. So if you could just jump ahead to the next slide. Here's a few different ways that we use imagery inside of our e-commerce strategy. So we always have what's called a hero image, or the first image that people will see when they find your product online. But we usually try to add a few more where possible. So we'll have, not only that hero image or the most important product shot of what they're buying, but then we'll pull out a bottle so that they can actually see a little bit more closely what they're going to be purchasing and maybe the size of the product. Like this is a 12-ounce bottle. Then we use what's called lifestyle content. So we want to try to find some way, maybe it's like, in this example, it's pouring it into a glass with a nice background. In other cases, maybe we would want to use something that is thematic for the time of year, a fall picture, or using food, things like that. And then lastly, we'll want to highlight some of the ingredients in the picture. So this is showing some of the apples that are used to make the Angry Orchard cider. So a number of different image shots that really matter. It all starts with what's called that hero image, or the first image that people will see. But it's important to think about what other images might be helpful to help a shopper connect to your product. So this is certainly shows the kind of complexity that can go into a really developed e-commerce strategy, but you know, it's an important thing to think about as you may roll out your products online in the coming weeks, months, or year. Jumping ahead to the last slide that I have is, you know, we're in as everybody has said, you know, we're in an unbelievably unprecedented time here, and you know, we're seeing a lot of people get creative with e-commerce, and you know, I had a few kind of recommendations or thoughts here of just things I've seen and heard. But I do think that, you know, if you're not participating in e-commerce, you know, this is an incredible time to think about it, you know, and really build out a strategy to bring your product online however possible. Because like I showed on that first slide, the food and beverage marketplace is shifting over the last couple of weeks, and that trend will have holding power. I do think, you know, that you should balance short-term and long-term business goals. You know, don't do something today that's going to really, you know, take away from the core of how you started out your business. You know, I know that there's a lot of communities that are rallying around gift cards for small businesses, and that's a great way to put dollars into small businesses today. You know, but I do think there's some caution there. You know, there's going to be a lot of future transactions that are not going to bring cash in for those businesses as people try to redeem those gift cards. So just something to you know, a creative way to put dollars in the cash register now when we need them. But you know, just you know, we need to be cautious about what we're doing for our business down the road. You know, curbside pickup is popping up everywhere across food and beverage. Yesterday was, you know, there was a national focus from the National Restaurant Association around takeout. So it was called the Great American Takeout. I don't know if any of you saw that across social media or anything, but they were encouraging restaurateurs to be open for takeout if possible, and encouraging the public to buy. And I stopped into a local spot, and they, you know, they were typically not doing curbside pickup, but they were offering it yesterday. You know, they said they were down $700 to $1,000 a day in revenue. But you know, just having curbside was generating some dollars yesterday. So you know, get creative. Another thing, you know, I've seen last night watching the news, a local hair salon that was not doing any business started putting together hair coloring kits and was delivering them to customers' houses. I've heard stories of merchants selling branded merchandise items like shirts and hats, or you know, cross-promoting products, and just finding ways to stay alive and relevant, and leveraging you know, online business during this unprecedented time. So some real kind of creative ways to stay afloat, and some important things to think about, because there are a lot of shoppers that are looking to their phone or their laptop right now to make purchases. So you know, some stuff to think about. I look forward to the Q&A, and I hope that some of this was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe, and Connor and Matt as well, for all your insights, guys. I really feel like I've already learned so much, and we haven't even gotten to the meat of the questions yet. So thank you very much. So now, everybody, it's time for your questions. So please go ahead and use that chat button on the Zoom window to type in your questions to the chat box, and I will ask them to our panelists for you so we can have some discussion here. As you're typing those questions, though, I just want to take a second to point you to a few trusted resources that we have found to be really valuable. They're listed on the slide here for you right now. So first, of course, for any information about keeping yourself or your family or your employees healthy, we definitely recommend checking out the CDC's website. They have a specific page geared toward best practices and resources for small businesses. So definitely that should be a place that you're checking frequently. A second resource is the Small Business Majority Updates page. So Small Business Majority is a national partner that we work with, and they have a page where they're consistently adding and updating resources. So you can continue to check there regularly to get some of your questions answered, and see what else is going on in the small business space that might be helpful to you. And third, of course, is the Brewing the American Dream Facebook page, which is a really great place to learn about newly added resources. As different programs are getting announced, we like to promote what a lot of our partners in small business support are doing and all of that fantastic work, in addition to promoting the entrepreneurs themselves who are part of this program. So definitely give that page a follow so you can consistently hear from us. And then last but not least, before we move to questions, I also just want to recommend that you sign up for the next webinar that we're going to be having. It will be this coming Monday, March 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. That webinar will be all about the SBA's relief funding options. And that's a very complex topic, of course, and I'm sure, as you all know, it's changing really rapidly as the U.S. government responds to this crisis. So we're excited to have the SBA as a really strong partner to help everybody navigate what that financing landscape is going to look like. So definitely recommend you sign up for that webinar as well. All right, so enough from me about all these things that we have to offer. Now let's look at some of these questions. So what we've gotten so far in the chat box, Matt, we have a question for you from Adam about examples on some of this branding. So whether it's how to be flexible on your brand messaging and story. Can you think of a couple examples, either maybe things that you've seen local small businesses doing or things that Sam Adams has been doing to be flexible about that message and story right now?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. I can give just a few quick examples. So one sort of on a larger brand scale, I think the job that Guinness has done, obviously St. Patrick's Day being such a huge celebration moment, and it's their biggest day of the year for that brand, and I think the way that they pivoted around that with a very near-term message of the importance of staying home, and then sort of also understanding that people are missing out on that celebration moment, but sort of reassuring them that while this year is different, the brand isn't going anywhere, and they'll be there to celebrate when we come back. So I think they've done a really nice job as a larger sort of national brand, I think, at every step of the way so far. For Sam Adams, we pivoted, as I said in the beginning, we pivoted out of all of our new campaigns and everything that we had planned from a marketing perspective to try to really just focus on giving back through the Restaurant Strong Fund that we created with the Greg Hill Foundation. So, we're doing our best to make a positive impact for the people that need it the most. And then just, getting to just a local business in my hometown that, to me, I thought has done just an amazing job. I mean, they shared a post on social media talking about how they had been tied to a local community in my town for many years, and that they recognized that during this difficult time that some local children and families were affected, and if a child was on a reduced lunch program or just if a family was in need, they were going to provide healthy breakfast sandwiches at no cost to those who need it. And that, to me, I think is just an amazing way to highlight just how much you care about the community as a local business. Clearly this is, these are business owners that are aware of the situation, and they're finding any way that they can to help. So I think it can be big brands, it can be small local businesses, but I think those who have done it the best just sort of demonstrate that they're aware of what's going on. They find a way to make a positive impact, whether that's big or small. I mean, even just to be able to help one person find food for a child, I think, in the instance of the local shop in my town, I think is just an amazing thing to do. So I would say, there are plenty more examples, I'm sure, of brands that are doing great things in different categories, and also tons of local businesses that are doing amazing things like this every day. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing similar things. So those are just a few examples that I can think of that are really top of mind.
Yeah, those are really great examples. Thank you, Matt. All right, we have a couple more questions here. Thanks for sending them in, everybody. So we have a question from Salma, who owns a creperie, and Salma's interested in talking about social media a little bit. So Connor, she is looking for some pointers on best ways to keep customers engaged. If she can't do e-commerce, a restaurant doesn't really have an intuitive e-commerce option, but how could she kind of keep on top of their social media presence and keep connected with customers, even if it's not the typical transaction relationship that they usually have? What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know like different states and cities even have different rules right now. So if you're unable to do curbside pickup or delivery, and your restaurant is truly closed, I think trying to find ways to create content for people who may be at home and might be interested. Maybe they're trying to cook for the first time. You could have a whole content series around recipes and trying to help teach people how to recreate at least a version of your product at home. Probably not your actual product, but that could be a whole content series. Just trying to find, I would imagine if your business is closed, it's probably, people probably aren't allowed to leave their houses. So trying to find information that you can provide to them that would be valuable for the situation that you're all in. That would really be my recommendation. And if you do have the opportunity to do curbside pickup or link up with a delivery service, I know those services are ramping up their sales teams. They're trying to offer discounts to people, to businesses. So I think it's definitely worth exploring now if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's great, Connor. Thank you. It actually, you kind of already answered a question that Meg had around moving to sort of instructional or recipe type videos for social media. I think that's a great idea. I would definitely watch those while I'm stuck in my house during this time. Any ideas, either Connor or maybe Joe, on if there's any potential to monetize that type of content?
Oh, definitely there is. I know definitely within like YouTube itself, you can monetize your content. I do think it might be tough to do it immediately. Really, the monetization comes in once you've built an audience. And so to build an audience, you have to be creating content consistently. It has to be of a certain quality that people are willing to come back. You really have to be providing value in those videos. And you have to be marketing that content. So whether you're sharing it out on other social platforms, if you are teasing it out with blogs, trying to get blogs to cover that content for you, that can be a way to promote it. But it does take it takes a lot of time and effort to monetize it, but it is possible.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You kind of have to build it up a little bit, but better to start now than never, right? You got the time. That's great. All right. So we did have, a few questions from other folks on social media specifics. So Connor, a question from Desiree is around sort of how to comment or what to say without being divisive or contributing to sort of this panic or some of the negative pieces that are on social media right now. So being aware of the situation and vocally kind of, as you were saying before, responsive to what people are going through, and being supportive and showing solidarity, but not kind of crossing a line and contributing to some of that negativity. Any advice on how to thread that needle?
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard, especially if people are commenting on your content with negative sentiment around what's going on. I think, just trying to be supportive. It's okay to disagree with people. It's also okay to let people know that it's not a conversation that you want to have. I think you can also ignore people too. Trolls are a real thing online, and sometimes the best way to deal with trolls is to ignore them. But I think there's a difference between your own personal social media and your business's social media, and so certain topics, it may not make sense for you to just engage with them from your business, but it's definitely tough. And I think in general, if you can provide an optimistic point of view on what's going on, like Matt said, you will come out stronger once we all get through this. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we have another question from Desiree. Matt, I think maybe you would be best poised to help us with this one. So the example Desiree gives around either having to suspend relationships because of some of the restrictions that are in place, B2B relationships or with distributors. She's talking specifically about with distributors not being able to cross state lines right now. Some of the those relationships are suspended, but how can folks stay relevant, whether it's with their delivery drivers or folks who are giving them their inventory or other key partners for the business? How do they continue to provide value and keep those relationships strong when kind of business as usual has been suspended for a little while here?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and Joe actually might be a great person to weigh in on this one as well. But I do think you said something that in there that was really important, which is relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And much like you can earn a lot of credibility with consumers during this time of how your brand is acting and showing leadership and empathy. Certainly any brand that's doing that with consumers, I would encourage sharing, checking in. Obviously, first and foremost, everybody, is a human being at the end of the day. So I think it's, as much as it is about maintaining the business relationship, obviously, just people's personal health and safety is number one. But I think it's, personally, I think it's totally appropriate to send a note, to keep in touch, and to also even share updates on what your brand has been doing during this time. And I think the more we can demonstrate our commitments to our communities, however we define that community, could be on a large scale or a very local scale. Those are powerful stories to tell, and it'll speak volumes about who you are and what's important to you and what's important to your business. So I think it's an important element of coming out of this strong is if you are doing the right things during this time. I think it's totally appropriate to share an overview of what you're doing, and just kind of keep people up to speed on how your brand is operating, because it will have positive effects when we come out of this. So I think on a very sort of personal level, I think it's absolutely encouraged to keep people in the loop on what you're doing. As an example, we're sharing updates out through our sales network around the success of the Restaurant Strong program and just what we're doing to give back. And it's not about talking about the latest beer that we've brewed. It's much more just celebrating the lives that we're impacting. So I think that's sort of one element there. And I'm not sure if Joe would have any other specific sort of tips or tricks or tactics to utilize, but to me, it's about just maintaining the relationship and keep people informed of what you're doing for people at the end of the day.
That was definitely the first thing that came to mind, Matt, was, I've seen a lot of, the kind of CEO letter to customers, and particularly inside of, I think your question was specific about alcohol. I think that the distributors and retailers, they're very aware of the supply challenges that are occurring right now, and like Matt said, there is a human factor here where they get it. They understand, and I think the communication is so important. But I know that we've even seen inside of some of our distributors, some of our biggest distributors, like at Manhattan Beer, the real changes to the way that their operations teams are running. They're shipping full pallets only, and they've stopped shipping some of our smaller volume products for the ease of loading trucks with more challenged workforces. And so there's been just a tremendous amount of shifts in the way that people are doing business right now, and they get it. And I think that the most important thing is definitely just communication, and doing the best to help make sure that people understand that you're there and you're doing everything you can based on the circumstances.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And just kind of to the point I think that Connor made during the presentation, not being afraid to be a little bit more transparent, right? Both with your business contacts, either a retailer or a distributor, but also with your customers, and kind of, I think, Connor, the phrase you used was lift the curtain a little bit, and being honest with folks in this time, because we're all suffering, in different ways and to different degrees. But I think it makes a lot of sense to lean on each other a little more and be a little bit more honest with what's going on. And on a practical note, I feel like it would be easy to create some of that content and then tailor it to your different audience, right? So maybe if you're putting it on social media, you change some of the language, make it a little bit shorter. And if you're sending an email, it's a little bit longer, that kind of thing. Are you guys at Boston Beer, Connor, are you guys doing any of that, kind of repurposing some things to make it work across different platforms?
Yeah, we are. Even recently for the Great American Takeout yesterday, we were leveraging their logo on our content it's probably something typically we would try to make it feel more like one of our brands, but because of the situation and the nature of the content, like it's very much about restaurants, and so we don't need to take credit for it. It's their initiative, and just showing support there was an easy way to just repurpose some content that had already been created. But yeah, I think people are pretty forgiving with the types of content that you're pushing out right now in terms of like production quality. So, if it's writing an email and screenshotting that and sending it out, if that's the best way for you to communicate, I think people will understand right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, and I think we've answered most questions that we've gotten in here. One left that we haven't touched on yet is from Bill. He's asking, what things do you see that are happening right now in terms of sort of new implementation in ways that we're marketing or communicating about our brands? Of those things, what do you think will still be in effect in a year, if there's sort of lasting changes that we'll see in terms of the marketing mix versus things that might kind of fall away? Not sure, maybe Matt wants to take that one, whoever has insight.
Sure. And I think, Connor and Joe, feel free to chime in. I think it's a great question. What I think that this time is forcing everyone to do is actually slow down, to be more introspective, and to really reevaluate what our purpose is. So, some brands and organizations have been, better at this than others. And, I hope actually what this leads to, and I hope what we're seeing in a year from organizations is this commitment to community, this commitment to unity, togetherness, and helping each other. So I'm hopeful that if anything, the challenges that we've faced, I hope and believe that they can make us stronger. And certainly for brands, it really does force you to think about your purpose. So what I'd like to see is, organizations that are in need are still being helped at the level they are today. It's great to see people sort of rally and brands and companies rally in a time of crisis, but hopefully that has a lasting impact of the way that people think about sort of the triple bottom line, not just sort of the, for profit, and much more about how can we play a more active role in the communities that we're in. So I would hope to say, and I believe that is something that we'll look back on in a year and take away as a positive that maybe wasn't happening to the degree that it could. So that's just one thought from my end.
Yeah, and to build on that on a more tactical level, I think we are seeing a lot of people who are leveraging digital to monetize their business. And so, I see fitness instructors are hosting classes on Instagram Live and asking people to, contribute what they can to, their PayPal accounts. And I think people are probably trying things that just out of a need right now that maybe might be successful opportunities for them down the road once everything is settled. But I do think some of these people who are trying things for the first time and they're taking risks right now out of need, and I think some of them are going to strike some profitable business models to move forward with.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there'll be some adaptation that turns out to be the stronger model that might come out of this, and some of that we can see as an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to grow right now, for sure. Alrighty, well, I think that's about all the time we have. We're at the top of the hour, so I want to give a huge thank you to our partners at Sam Adams. Matt and Connor and Joe, you guys have been so fantastic to give us some of your time today to help navigate this really chaotic time of change for us. So I really appreciate your time, and I certainly appreciate the time of everybody who has joined us for this conversation today. I'll be sending out the recording of this presentation here shortly, and definitely would encourage you to use the resources that I have here on the left sidebar, and then also stay tuned for more updates from us about how we'll be continuing to support small businesses throughout this time. So thanks again, everybody, and we will be with you again soon. Have a good day.